Hi everybody, welcome back. Thanks for joining me again. This is a new quick build on the channel of Airfix's brand new release 1/48 scale Bristol Bulldog II. It's quite unusual for me to do biplanes. I've just done one on the channel before. That's the CR42 that I did last year, but that was in 132 scale. And this is slightly more complex in terms of the rigging that's required. The CR42 is pretty straightforward in terms of the rigging. But we'll give this a go. I'm going to do this in one, maybe two episodes, so fairly quick build for me. So we'll crack the box open, and I think we'll be starting off with the cockpit as usual. So here we've got Airfix's fairly familiar by now style of instructions, which is usually broken down into a relatively small number of parts. It's not overcomplicated, and it's good in that you can see the effect of the previous stage of construction highlighted in red. So I find them pretty easy to follow generally, and hopefully that'll be the case here. So as I said, we're going to start with the cockpit. Get some parts cut out and we can make a start. This is Airfix's new style of plastic. It's pretty hard, and as a consequence of that it can be sometimes a little bit brittle as well, so you've got to take care with it. But the advantage of it is that it really holds the detail well, and Airfix's new design capacity means that they're getting ever more refined in terms of what they're producing. What I like to do with this new plastic is cut away from the sprue gate to start with, and then we'll clean them up with some sharper cutters. These are a fairly old pair now of Tamiya side cutters, but for final cleanup I'll use these new, for me, God Hand side cutters. And just to finish the parts off, just go around with a fine sanding stick just to get rid of the last bits of the sprue gate. It's worth it with these modern kits because often the tolerances of the fit is quite tight, so the parts have got to be as designed, if you like, and that means removing any bits of flash or excess plastic on them. I'm just juggling around with the lighting at the moment because I've had to change my bench around and it has altered the lighting, so if it's a little bit different to what you're used to, just bear with me, we'll get it sorted out. This is a pretty delicate and fine assembly, but it does go together perfectly. All the connection points line up properly. So I think what I'm going to have to do is paint the side frames before I assemble the seat and the rudder pedal and the rudder boards, because I've got to get in to paint the trim wheel as well. So I'm not going to be able to get in, it's pretty tight up against the seat, so I will paint those 3-4 components separately, sort the trim wheel out and then do the assembly. Just taking a look at the cockpit compared to the opening, and that's just to gauge how much work to put in, how much painting work to put in, and whether or not it's worth it. It's a very small opening, I'm not going to be able to see very much through there, so I think I'll just stick to the basics with it, and hopefully it'll be enough. I think what I'll do is just add some belts. So obviously the seat's right in the opening, but everywhere else, when you can see the size of the framing compared with the opening itself, there's not much to be seen in there. I'm going to glue the breeches at this point. Airfix tell us to do it once the cockpit's together. But what we can do is just fit it at the bottom point there and then dry fit the ammunition boxes and the rudder boards so that the ammunition feed lines up with the gun. I'll just repeat that on the other side. So I don't think I can do any more assembly and cutting out. I'm going to have to do some painting now. So I'll get all these parts primed up and the first coat of paint on. We'll have to do a little bit of detail painting on them, but once all that's done, we'll come back and we can put all this together. Okay, all the cockpit components have been painted in, it's actually Mr. Surface 1500 black. Gives a nice finish to the parts. And now I'm going to use some Tamiya XF63 German grey just to pick out some of the detail on the parts. On black interiors, I think it's just as well to try and add a little bit more variation in the colours. Can just get lost inside there, especially through such a small opening in the fuselage. So this just adds a little bit of light onto the edge of the parts, brings the detail out a bit. Okay, so just a bit of detail painting on these now. I'm using Citadel paints for this. They cover really nicely. Nice dense pigments in them. This is Tamiya lacquer gloss aluminium for the control column. Okay, time to fit some belts to the aircraft now. And I'm going to be using this set, 49006 from Edward. It's seat belts RAF World War II actually, but it does include the earlier type of Sutton A harness, which actually came into use late on in the First World War, 1918 I think it was, and went right the way through the interwar years and appeared on some early RAF fighters, like the Spitfire and the Hurricane, things like that. They were replaced later on with a similar sort of harness with a quick release button on the lap belts here, which is also provided in the set, but it's not. It's too late for the Bulldog. So I've already cut a set of these out and shaped them, so we'll get them glued onto the seat. I'm using a thick CA for this. They need very little. So we have to be careful with these. We've obviously got all the painting done. Don't want to mar it now with getting cement all over them. Now the last job before closing all this cockpit up is just to paint some red. It's like a hull red colour in the bottom. It was the type of dope used on these RAF aircraft interwar. So I'll just go off, mask this up and just get those painted. I'm not sure how much you're going to be able to see, but I'll do it according to the instructions. So that's done. I've used some Tamiya dull red, that's a lacquer colour. I've also painted the centre section of the lower wing. That's because when you join it like that, you can see the middle of the wing through the bottom of the cockpit floor. So as I said, I'm not sure how much of that you're going to be able to see anyway, but just in case, that's all done. Now I want to move on and finish the last things in the cockpit, which includes the instrument panel. Airfix provide the instrument decals here in 3 separate decals to go on this tiny instrument panel. They appear to be a good fit, but I'll just let them set up for a while. Let them settle down, and then I'll probably use a bit of solver set on them. The bezels on the instrument panel are quite deep, so they're going to need a little bit of help, I think. Okay, we'll just leave that alone for 10 minutes or so just to let it settle. Then we'll see if we need any more solution on it. Whilst we're waiting for that, we'll just do a little bit of assembly. You have to be very careful with solver set. It's really strong, and if you apply it and then try to move the decal round, you'll probably tear it. The solver set changes the decal into almost a rubber sort of latex consistency, but it is really good for dropping these dials into the bezels. And then once this is dry, I'll just drop a little bit of Tamiya lacquer LP9 clear into the dial faces just to represent the glass. Okay, that's dried okay now, settled down pretty well. So I just want to fill the instrument faces with some of this. This is Tamiya LP9 clear lacquer varnish, and with a fine brush just drop it in. It's a lacquer, so it will self-level into the instrument face. That should dry in a couple of minutes, then we can assemble the instrument panel and join the fuselage, I think. Just clean up the mating surfaces, it'll just take the glue a bit better. This is quite a new feature, I think, on Airfix kits, which are these tabs. To be careful not to cut those off. So they just make sure that when you join the parts, you can hear them click together, and it makes sure that that surface there is level. And it's a bit of extra glue support as well, I suppose, so I think that's a welcome addition. It certainly makes a much more positive fit of the main components. So the instrument panel's dry, let's get that glued on. So that's a really nice little cockpit assembly, goes together without any trouble at all. The fit of the parts is fantastic. There's some of the detail that you're not really going to be able to see. The rudder pedals, for example, are really a long way down into the front of the cockpit. But certainly the seat looks nicer with the harness attached. And overall, I think that's quite a good effort from Airfix. So let's get this installed and we can now join the fuselage halves. Let's do a quick check fit first. I think it's going to be okay. It's all good. Let's pop it open and get some glue on. Airfix have given us some detail on this. I'm assuming it's a tank of some sort. And I think that's probably because you might just be able to see it down through the footwell. It's hard to tell, I can't really see it, but I might just give it a quick coat of silver paint just in case you can catch a glimpse of it later on. These are the wing halves for the lower wing, full span as you can see, and this is the one where I've painted the red for the inside of the cockpit. You can just see a little bit of this in front of the seat. We have a couple of holes to drill, and that's because Airfix give us the option of a generator which powered the radio, but it was removable, so the aircraft didn't always have it. I'm going to omit it on mine, so I don't need the hole on the port wing here, but I'll drill out this one. The other thing that I'm going to do whilst I've got the wings in this state is just to mark out the rigging points a little bit more, just with a needle. Airfix do give you them, but they're very shallow, so I just want to mark them out a little bit more strongly. I'm going to be using 0.1mm nickel silver rod eventually to rig the aircraft. So I just want the hole here big enough just to accept the very end of that rod. One area that Airfix haven't quite sorted yet are the trailing edges on the kits. They tend to be a little bit thick, so you can help them a little bit. It's not possible to sort them out completely, I don't think, but you can improve them a little bit just by thinning them down. That's just a little bit better. That'll do. So we'll get these glued up. Just noticed a little moulding flaw on the wing. It looks like the mould's been chipped. So we've got a little raised dimple on the fabric. That's just easy enough to smooth out. Just look out for that on your kits if you're going to build this. The wings are going to need a bit of attention once they've dried. As I said, they are thick, and there's also quite a prominent seam that we're going to have to clean up and fill probably. But for the moment, just make sure that the join's tight. Make sure it's all going to go together. I'm not going to attach the wing at this point. Airfix tell us to do that, but as I said, I want to make sure that it's dry and properly cleaned up before I do that. The engine mounting on a Bulldog is fairly unusual. You can see these fin type arrangements which wrap around the cylinders, and because of that we can't actually assemble the whole engine and just push it in the front. The openings here are too narrow for the cylinders to push through, so we have to assemble the block, if you like, and then each individual cylinder on it. So I'll just make up the block, and I'll show you how it fits in. Eventually the engine drops in like that, and we then have to assemble the cylinders onto these pegs one by one. So the last thing I want to do for this first part is just put the top wing together, and then I'll put the model to one side to dry, ready to finish it off next time out. Just some bits of flash on those ejector pins there, which just need to be cut smooth. These mouldings are pointed out in the Airfix instructions, and they tell us to file them flat. Okay, so I'll leave the ailerons off for the moment, just until I clean the edges of the wing up. But that's just about as much as I can do now before starting to do a little bit of painting. So we've got the fuselage, the wings all ready to go. So hopefully next time we'll be able to get the painting done and get this one finished off, a nice short two-part series. And this is an example of Airfix improving really with every kit. This is a really nice kit to put together so far, and I'm hoping that that'll continue when we come to do the interplane struts, and hope that everything lines up properly. I'm sure it will from what I've seen so far. So I'll leave it there. I'm going to leave this to dry for at least 2 or 3 days. That's my usual practice, if you like, just to make sure that the glue's thoroughly set. And then, as I said, we'll come back next time and get this one finished off. So I'm also working at the moment on the Lancaster, as you know if you're following the channel, and also the 132 scale Tornado, which I've been working on as well this week. So I'll be catching up with you again with another couple of videos fairly soon. In the meantime, everybody, look after yourselves, stay safe. I'll see you soon. Bye for now.